Hi, everybody. We're going to take just a few seconds to give everybody a chance to join in, and then we'll start. So welcome to the Connect and Learn. This Connect and Learn is featuring Kåren Broyles, who's teaching echolocation and the resonance of bones, an osteopathic approach to body work. I'm Deborah Valentine Smith. I'm the current president of AOBTA, and our crew for this presentation includes Wayne Milan, who's our managing director, Brian Scow, who's our communications director, and Matthew Swigert, who's our, communications consultant, and Matthew Swigert, who's our communications director, who will be fielding questions. So if you have questions on the presentation as we go through, you can type them in the chat box, which you'll find at the bottom of your screen. And Matthew will be collecting those, and at the end of the presentation, he'll be fielding them and sending them to Kåren. So we just want to remind you that we're heading into our convention. The registration for the convention is going to be opening on Monday, the 23rd. So just keep your eyes out for the email about that. Some housekeeping. In this webinar, you are in listen mode only. We can't see or hear you, but we can respond to the chat and the Q&A boxes. So if you type things in there, we can respond there. This webinar is being recorded, and the recording will be made available to you after the presentation and be made available to people who couldn't attend in person today. So if you don't want to have your name listed, you should know that right now. In the upper right corner of your screen, you will see a bunch of boxes, and you have the choice of gallery view or speaker view. If speaker view is present right now, click on that because you want to be in speaker view. And I think that's it. There will be, at the end of the presentation, there will be a poll asking for your evaluation of the program and of this particular one. So we really appreciate it if you would respond there. And I want to introduce Kåren. Kåren Elisa Broyles, who has been in practice since 1993. She's been an AOBTA certified practitioner since 1995. She's a diplomate of Asian bodywork therapy through the NCC AOM and currently practices in St. Louis, Missouri. She's an avid student of ABT and has studied with many of the well-known teachers in the field. She's been an active AOBTA member for many years, serving on the editorial board for Pulse and several other committees, including the Convention Committee. She's also a registered practitioner of OrthoBionomy, a form of bodywork based in osteopathy and developed by the osteopath Arthur Lincoln Pauls. So welcome, Kåren. Thank you so much. We're so happy to have you doing this.
Thank you, DVS. Thank you, Debbie. I'm used to calling you DVS in old days. I have to get used to the other. I'm very pleased to be presenting. You should know if you email me, I can I answer questions. If you have follow-up questions after this, or if there's more you'd like to learn, you're welcome to send me an email. I will get back to you because I like sharing this work with people. I'd like to begin by reading a few passages from the Tao Te Ching that I think relate directly to what I will be presenting today. If you want to become whole, let yourself be partial. If you want to become straight, let yourself be crooked. If you want to become full, let yourself be empty. If you want to be reborn, let yourself die. If you want to be given everything, give everything up. That's chapter 22 of the Tao Te Ching in part. A good traveler has no fixed plans, and is not intent upon arriving. A good artist lets his intuition lead him wherever it wants. A good scientist has freed himself of concepts and keeps his mind open to what is. Chapter 27. If you want to shrink something, you must first allow it to expand. If you want to get rid of something, you must first allow it to flourish. If you want to take something, you must first allow it to be given. This is called the subtle perception of the way things are. Chapter 36. And finally, chapter 39. The mark of a moderate man is freedom from his own ideas, tolerant like the sky, all-pervading like sunlight, firm like a mountain, supple like a tree in the wind. He has no destination in view and makes use of anything life happens to bring his way. So my name is Kåren Elisa, Kåren for short. I've been applying OrthoBionomy principles to my shiatsu practice since 1994. I attribute some of my longevity as a practitioner to the practice of OrthoBionomy. OrthoBionomy, as Debbie said, was developed by Arthur Lincoln Pauls, who was a doctor of osteopathy and also a judo practitioner, a black belt in judo. He was influenced both by his judo practice and by Lawrence Jones, who developed strain counterstrain. I'm going to move to the next slide here. When we touch bone in a living person, we are touching living responsive tissue. While the bone in our classroom skeleton may have felt rigid and unyielding, living bone is flexible and resilient. It's this resilience that supports bone's piezoelectric properties. And if you've done any reading of Dan Keown, you know that there's an awful lot of buzz in the shiatsu community about piezoelectricity at the moment. It is also this resilience that gives bone its strength. Our ability to hear is in part due to the flexibility of bone and its ability to resonate. When we touch living bone, we encounter resonance. We often perceive bone as hard and unyielding, when in fact it is flexible and fluid. Tuning our attention to this level changes the quality of our work, and I would argue that it tunes us more to the level of Jing. Bone is also fluid, containing between 5 to 10% water. This has interesting ramifications for body work. When we send a small impulse of movement through a long bone, it is possible to feel that movement travel through the bone, encounter an obstruction, and return. This is a little like sloshing water in a bathtub, although the movement is slower. There is the initial movement, and there's the rebound. Sensing this level of movement requires tuning the palpation to a very fine level. But in our work as Asian bodywork therapists, we tune our palpation to the level of Qi or Qi. So this is a minor adjustment. Working with the long bones, you can send out a little ping and wait for it to come back. Ping and wait for it to return, like radar. So I'd like us to experience that for just a moment. I'm going to give you a moment for everyone to get into a position where you can find gallbladder 40 and find gallbladder 34. So finding gallbladder 40 and finding gallbladder 34. So when you have gallbladder 34 and gallbladder 40, you're at either end of the fibula. So we're going to practice pinging along the length of the fibula. An important principle to remember here is that less is more. We're going to use the weight of a dime or less for our impulse. And the reason for this is that you're not trying to pick up the gross movement of the bone. You're trying to pick up the resonance of the bone itself. And if you are listening for a whisper, it's best not to shout. So using just the weight of a dime, initiate an impulse at gallbladder 40, feel it travel up to gallbladder 34, and return. This will happen more slowly for some people and more quickly for others. Everyone has their own rhythm. Notice what you're feeling. Observe your body without preconception and notice what you're feeling. Notice how it feels in your entire body when you bring your attention to the level of bone. The flexibility of bone means also that it can subtly twist, a bit like a branch of living wood. So when we have distortions in the body, twists and turns and contractions, they can go all the way down to the level of bone, and the bone itself can become twisted because it's like green wood. As you can see, this little bird is demonstrating that by bending the branch upon which he is sitting. Bones bend very similarly. One of the most interesting ways that I apply this principle and this understanding in my regular practice is when people have rib pain. Not so often, but frequently enough, I'll get someone coming in who has sharp pains on inhalation, and they've been told that they don't have a rib out. However, sometimes the rib, while not being out, has in fact twisted. And applying OrthoBionomy principles, we can encourage the rib to find its way back. It's very important. We don't put things back. We encourage the body to find its way back. And like magic, the pain disappears. It's pretty neat. This is also true for the first rib. The first rib becomes elevated and compresses the thoracic outlet. We're probably all familiar with that syndrome where people end up with carpal tunnel syndrome, but it's actually located up here. You can learn to both encourage the first rib to drop itself and also show your client how to do it on their own. Again, less is more. There's very, very, very little force applied. Mostly you're giving the body a nudge when you do this. So I want you to experience for yourself what that flexibility of bone feels like. So go ahead and place one hand or the other. And by the way, I want you to use the same side of your body for this exercise that you work the fibula on. So if you started with the fibula on the left side, go ahead and stay on the left side. If you started with the fibula on the right side, go ahead and stay on the right side. So take that same side hand and place it on your kneecap, place it on the patella. You're stabilizing the forearm by doing this. Okay, having stabilized the forearm, take your other hand and grasp the radius and the ulna. So just wrap your hand around the radius and the ulna and give a little bit of force, just a little, less than a dime, not more than. This is very, very subtle, to the left or to the right, doesn't matter which, laterally, let's say. Little compression laterally, little compression medially, and feel the bone shift under your hand. Now, if we went to a rotation, it would be more complicated, but shifting laterally and medially, you can feel the give of the bone itself. We'll come back to that. You can, while you're sitting here, also practice feeling the flexibility in the fibula as well. Because muscles attach to bone, we can change a muscle's tone simply by shifting the position of the bone to which it's attached. It's pretty neat. You can work with points, you can work with muscles without working the point or the muscle directly, simply by working with the bones to which the muscle in which the point is residing, or it's not the muscle, but the channel, the tendinomuscular meridian, is located. Okay, so I practice this, and the black has a tendency to disappear. But I'm going to hold this up against my hand so that you can kind of see what happens. This little tensegrity model. When you bring the two bones closer together, you see that give, you see that slack we get? That releases the whole muscle running between those two attachment points. So how do you experience that principle in your body? let's go ahead and work with gallbladder 21. If you've got a wall handy, that's great. I'm not going to be able to use the wall myself because that's not where I'm set up. However, if you monitor gallbladder 21, the middle finger doesn't have a pulse. You probably know that. It makes it easier to feel what happens in the point. If you monitor gallbladder 21 and then bring the arm to the side, the elbow bent, and you're going to lean into the wall so that it compresses the elbow into the shoulder joint, which then compresses into the base of the neck. It's like a bank shot. Bop, bop, bop. Okay. So compress the elbow into the shoulder, which then compresses the shoulder into the neck. And what you'll probably feel, all right, there's no guarantee, right? But what you'll probably feel is a softening of the point underneath and maybe even a pulsing. So that's one way to indirectly release a point like gallbladder 21. If it doesn't release, all right, if it doesn't release, often the case is you simply need to adjust the angle of the arm to find neutral for that point. And I'll talk about that more in a moment. The fluidity of bone, not to mention the fluidity of the body itself, gives us the opportunity to practice a kind of echolocation as we assess and treat the body, sending small impulses, small movement impulses through the body and noticing the speed and trajectory of their return. We already did that with the fibula. I enjoy this aspect to the treatment because it becomes a dance. I am simply sending out an impulse, waiting for it to return, sending out an impulse, waiting for it to return. And by doing so, I get the shape of how the body is moving, where the tension patterns are in the body, and I get led to where I need to be. It's pretty fun, actually. It's like playing jazz, actually. So this body work is osteopathy based. This is an osteopathically based form of body work. Some of the basic tenets of osteopathy are unity of function. The body is a united, continuous whole. The body heals itself. So when a surgeon stitches the wound to bring the edges into proximity, that's all he does. He brings the edges into, well, it's not all he does, but he brings the edges into proximity, and the body itself is what knits the wound together. Structure and function are reciprocal. Form affects function, but function over time affects form. The rule of the artery is supreme. Blood, lymph, fluid must circulate in order for health to exist. If you remove the obstruction, the body can heal itself. I think these principles are things that would probably resonate with any practitioner of traditional Asian medicine. Some basic principles of OrthoBionomy. Non-judgmental presence. We already have the principle in Shiatsu of empty mind. We keep coming back to non-judgmental presence. When we practice OrthoBionomy, it's simple, not easy. It's so easy to walk in with an idea of what you think should happen. It's also easy to walk in with an idea of what you want to happen for the client. We all consider ourselves caring and compassionate individuals. And so we therefore want our clients to feel better. But the minute you start wanting, that would be the non-attachment to results, you are already starting to pass judgment on the situation. One of my teachers said, when somebody comes to me with a severe case of kyphosis, my job is not to make the kyphosis go away. My job is to help them feel more comfortable in that pattern. And by helping them feel more comfortable in that pattern, sometimes the pattern self-corrects, but it's not my job to decide whether or not that's what needs to happen. Rhythm and timing. So that's why I have the swing up here on the screen. Everybody has their own rhythm. Everybody has their own timing. To the degree that you can get into another person's timing, the body will feel safer and it will tell you more. It's just like being in a conversation where you're listening and reflecting accurately back to the person, what they're saying to you. They feel listened to, they're likely to tell you more. Even small infants, they actually did an experiment with this, which greatly distressed the infants, where they had the mothers not mirror back to the child the expression they were showing their mother. And it was extremely distressing to the infants. In fact, they began to cry and become quite distressed when this happened. You know, the body's like that. People are like that. We rely on people getting into our timing. Exaggerating the pattern. So exaggerating the pattern, basically what you do, this is another way of listening. OrthoBionomy is sometimes called the healing conversation. You reflect back to the body what you're finding the body is doing. If someone walks in and their shoulders are like this, I don't try to push them back down again or, you know, do what I can to work that out. Instead, I grasp the shoulders and lift them just a little bit more, just a little. Remember, less is more, the weight of a dime. And what the body does essentially is, oh, I didn't know I was doing that. And very often it will let go. In addition, we're also making use of that for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction and that response, right? So when you lift, there's an opposite reaction that carries the shoulders down. But because the body is the one that responds to that, it's a more effective release. One of our principles or one of our ideas is that the releases that the body makes are more effective than anything that we might force, no matter how subtle our force may be. I'm sorry, I did not mean to do that. Let me back up here. The cursor got away from me. So exaggerating the pattern, another way to think of this is if you are holding a heavy weight, and a lot of people's tension patterns really feel to them like a heavy weight, and someone else comes and lifts it for you for just a minute, what do? You immediately begin to find your alignment and your center again. Even if you get the weight back, you've got a better dynamic than you had before the person lifted it for you. That's part of what we're doing when we exaggerate the pattern as well. Less is more. I put it in capital letters. I'm going to say it a lot. If you want to hear a whisper, it's best not to shout. And we've already discussed non-attachment to results. However, I will have to say that this is probably next to less is more, the most difficult of the principles to put into practice regularly, and I would consider it a lifelong discipline. Action evokes opposite and equal reaction. I've already talked about that. The follow-on, response and timing. So when you push the swing, it comes back. You want to get into the timing, right? If you don't do that, you're likely to get bopped in the nose. You push the swing, it comes back. There's also this idea of the follow-on response, a call-in response. So everybody remembers the Roger Rabbit movie. I can't remember the title precisely. Shave and a haircut. If you initiate a movement, the body will complete it or will feel the need to complete it. And you can actually encourage the body to move through a restricted movement pattern on its own by simply initiating the movement in the other direction. Shave, then haircut, 2 bits, right? Another thing to keep in mind, you know, exaggerating the pattern, it's important to listen to what you're finding, to mimic the pattern you're finding as closely as possible. But it's also important to follow the follow-on as closely as possible, to support and follow the follow-on. So when you release, you want to follow that movement. You know, it may not go exactly the way you think it's going to. It might kind of have a couple of twists in it. If you're following and supporting, you'll be there with the body when it does that release, that follow-on. Away from tension toward ease, always moving towards comfort. This is a job I give every client who gets on my table. I tell them they have 2 jobs. One is to breathe, and the other is to stay in touch with me and let me know if anything crosses over into the line of discomfort. And that's pretty monumental for most clients to do because they've been taught to endure a certain amount of therapeutic discomfort. I'm not saying that's bad, but it's not OrthoBionomy. By having clients pay attention to what is comfortable and uncomfortable at that minute level and give you feedback, both keeps them engaged in the session and responsible for their own responses. which is important. It also empowers them and helps them learn to recognize when things are uncomfortable. There's this certain lack of awareness that we often tend to move through in our daily lives, with that lack of awareness. And this helps to remedy it slowly but surely. Almost every session is an education in becoming more aware of your own body. So away from tension toward ease. That was a lot to say about a little sentence. The thought is the beginning of the motion. Sometimes that is the less of the less is more. We all know this. And the minute you think of bending this finger, you've already begun to do it. You've already begun to do it, even though there is no outward and visible motion. Remember, less is more. And sometimes we use the weight of a dime or less, but sometimes we just think the movement, and that's enough. That's enough to initiate that call and response, to initiate the conversation with the body. Got ahead of myself here. More concepts. Pain and force create defensive postures. So we know this. Our clients come in, they've got trauma. They have old accidents still stored in their bodies. They have compensatory postures that they adopted many, many years ago, which are no longer serving them. But we can also create defensive postures when the clients on our table are a mat. And it's important, at least from the perspective of OrthoBionomy, that we avoid doing that we don't give them another layer to have to unwind. So ease of motion, not range of motion. So this may be my range of motion, but where's ease of motion? That may be much smaller. We work with ease of motion. That goes back to moving towards comfort. Preferred posture, away from pain, okay? So it's just another way of saying moving towards comfort. We work within the area of comfort. This teaches the body where comfortable is. Preferred posture away from pain. So, as strange as it may seem to you, if this is where their shoulder is comfortable, that's what we're going to support. We let the body process itself. I tell my clients that there's no point in my getting into an argument with your body. So these Chinese finger traps are here for a reason, right? You can probably guess why. I'm going to beat this horse to death, right? Sorry. Bringing your fingers closer together releases the trap, right? Instead of tugging and working against the force, you support the force, and it's able to release. Finding neutral. I said I was going to talk about that. There are a lot of ways you can apply this principle. What got me into OrthoBionomy, in fact, was seeing someone do an iliopsoas release without ever touching the iliopsoas, just by finding neutral. And that's a little bit complex for me to talk about in this session. I don't want to throw too many things at you, too many concepts, but essentially, that's a principle. If you're stuck and you're wondering what to do next, ask yourself, so where can I find neutral? What's neutral? What's neutral is when you're shifting into neutral, that's where the gears aren't engaged. What's neutral here? When we compressed the elbow into the shoulder and we got that release, hopefully, that was neutral. When you felt it soften and spread under your fingers, that was neutral. We talk a lot about making a cave around a point. So if you've got a hypertonic point, you can simply lift the tissue on either side around and create a cave. You're exaggerating the pattern, among other things, and helping it to release. But that is also finding neutral. You monitor the point. What you're looking for is the place where it can let go, where nothing is engaging any longer. It's just softening and spreading under your fingers. And we know what that feels like because that's what it feels like when we release a point. But finding neutral applies to the movement of the joint as well. I'm going to go ahead and talk about it. Circle theory. I've got a little blackboard right here. I don't want to get too complicated, but circle theory, when you're working with a range of motion of a joint, if there's an area of restriction in that circle, you find it, come directly opposite it on that circle. Find it, come directly opposite on that circle. That's generally neutral. That's generally neutral on that range, on that circle. And then you add a little compression, wait for the follow-on and follow it out. So that's the circle. Here's your area of restriction. Here's where neutral probably is. But remember, you work with what you find. So if you don't find what I just said you would find what you find and work with it. You're still looking for neutral. You are reminding people of what they already know. That's a basic tenet of osteopathy, and it's something to keep in mind. The person on our table already has everything that they need to heal. They've just forgotten the way. And all you're doing is trying to help them get back on the path. They can find their way. Application. So you can see here, we've got a little demonstration of for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. OrthoBionomy is first and foremost a principle-based practice. If you wonder what to do, go back to the principles. The principle that I find most people have the most trouble grasping beyond non-judgmental presence and non-attachment to results, which I think is a struggle for everyone. You know, that's just part of living, is to keep that weight to a dime or less. It's so hard for us to believe that that little can do anything. There's a bumper sticker that says orthobionomists do nothing better, and that's the truth. You have to give yourself permission to be a whisper, to just listen. When I encounter students who are having difficulty grasping orthobionomy, this is almost invariably where they're running into problems. They can't really believe that if you back off that much, you're going to do anything at all. But in fact, that is where most of the results occur, even though we're not attached to them. These principles sound easy, and I think OrthoBionomy works very well with shiatsu because there's so many ways in which our philosophies echo each other. However, putting them into practice is an ongoing discipline. It is a lifelong discipline. It's simple, not easy. So I'd like us to do some more exercises just to get some practical application that you can take home and use on yourself, your friends and family. The reason I have the piano keys up here is because, if you've ever been around old pianos, you know that, keys get stuck in odd places. One gets stuck down, the other gets stuck up, right? This can happen with ribs, right? And we're not going to talk about treating ribs in this overview because that's a little bit more complicated and complex. But one place you can do it is right on the feet. And this is ideal for us because we can put two hands on the feet. So go ahead and grasp your foot and get hold of the first and second metatarsals. Get hold of the first and second metatarsals and seesaw the metatarsals very gently and feel the preferred direction. Whether it prefers going this way or that way. You're working with the relationship between those bones, which means we're working with what? The liver channel, right? We're working with the liver channel here. Right? That's why I want you to stay on the same side, because now you're working the liver channel with the gallbladder channel. So work with that first and second metatarsal, find the preferred position. Once you find the preferred position, get my foot up on the screen. I know I'm tiny, but hopefully you can see this. Once you find the preferred position, grasp either side, hold the position, grasp either side, and compress gently. Remember, weight of the dime. Compress the bones gently together. This wakes up the proprioceptive system. And part of what we do in OrthoBionomy is kind of get the proprioceptive system to wake up and recalibrate and say, oh, I didn't know I was doing that. So hold that, and then as the last bit, again, waking up the proprioceptive system, compress the entire foot gently, using about the weight of a dime, into the ankle joint. Okay, so I'll go over that again. Check which way it prefers to go, hold it there, compress gently inward, and then take the entire foot and compress into the ankle, so that you do all those things together. You're stacking movement here. So I've got this, that's the preferred movement. Say, for instance, I'm compressing inward, say my hands are out here, and then I also compress in towards the ankle joint. Then wait for the follow-on. Remember the call and response. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Follow that out, support what it's doing. Notice if it does a little zigzag on its way out. Sometimes it does. If you follow that, the release is even more effective. So try that a couple of times. We have another concept that goes along with less is more, which is you don't really try it more than 2 times, 3 at most. You don't want to be the door-to-door salesman that will not go away, that will not take no for an answer. If the body isn't releasing, there's probably something else that needs to release. So you move on. But have fun, and you don't have to stay just at the first and second metatarsals. You can move onward. And then I'd like you to pause for a moment and notice how your foot feels. And notice how this whole side of the body is feeling. Because we have worked with the liver channel. We have worked with the gallbladder channel. It's not comprehensive, but we've done some work. And we've also ended up working a little bit with the triple wormer. So we got the Shaoyan going, triple wormer and pericardium, by working with the radius and the ulna. So notice what the one side of your body feels like compared to the other. What was my other exercise? There was something else I wanted to show you. Oh, yes. So OrthoBionomy can be helpful when working with a hiatal hernia or acid reflux. And it's fairly simple to do this, especially since you're just using the weight of a dime. Remember, less is more. Go ahead and find the upper border of the stomach by finding your solar plexus. Take your thumb, place it at your solar plexus, and slide it laterally towards the splenic flexure. And you'll catch the edge, the top edge of the stomach, and just rest it there. That's a monitor. You're monitoring that. And then come a couple of fingers below the navel and come laterally towards the left, towards your left, and get hold of the abdomen there gently and compress upward slightly. And you should feel a little pressure in your thumb because you're lifting the stomach up into the thumb. This is a very general location of the stomach. Everybody's stomach is in slightly a different spot. So if you want to explore, that's fine. I'm doing this for a group of people I cannot see. So this is the best I can do for you. But if you play around with that, you'll feel it kind of ping-ponging between your fingers like we did with the fibula. When you've got the sense of having hold of the stomach, go ahead and check whether it prefers moving medially or laterally. Medially or laterally, okay? When you know which way it prefers, hold it there. Now, still holding it in its preferred position, check whether it prefers moving towards the head or towards the feet. Toward the head or toward the feet. And then carry it, still holding the previous preferred position, add this preferred position. And now try rotating. And notice which way it prefers to rotate. So you're stacking 3 positions. Notice which way it prefers to rotate, hold, and compress slightly in its preferred vertical direction. Wait for the rebound. So now if it is a hiatal hernia or acid reflux, the chances are its preferred vertical direction is going to be upward. However, far be it from me to say that's absolutely the way it has to be. You work with what you find. Wait for the rebound, wait for the follow-on, and follow the follow-on. Very often when you've got a hiatal hernia, there's almost like a little vibration as you come out, but you don't want to impose that vibration. You want to listen for it and follow it. Not force, but precision. Like putting English on a billiard shot. It is the light touch, just the right touch, responding to the pattern in front of you. Oh, and I wanted to say here that once you get comfortable with this kind of work, you can actually, I almost view the long bones as a pool cue, where I initiate a movement, say for instance, at the tibia, and then that transfers to the femur, which then transfers to the ilium. You see? So it's almost like a bank shot using the long bones as a pool cue, which I think is kind of neat. So working at the feet, you can feel a lot. You probably already know this if you've taken craniosacral too, that this is a concept you'll have encountered. You can feel a football, yeah. No, you can feel a footfall on the other side of the bridge. So all you have to do is stand at the feet and you can feel what's going on at the top of the head. If you want a little echolocation to add to your information, you can initiate an impulse at the feet, wait for it to travel to the top of the head. Sometimes it doesn't. Notice where it gets stuck. That's probably where you need to work next. Gentle traction on the tablecloth can inform us of the location of the objects resting on the cloth. So you can apply gentle traction at the feet. You can apply gentle traction on any endpoint of any channel and get a sense of what's going along the entire channel, where the location of the objects, where the restrictions are, where things aren't flowing well, where things are flowing well. And this is just a further illustration. When I'm working with channels in the body, this is often what it feels like to me. Like I've got hold of a thread, it's moving through water because the body is fluid. And I follow the pattern, I pay attention to the pattern, I exaggerate the pattern, I get a little emphasis, weight of a dime, wait for the follow-on and rebound. You can work with the channels using these principles. It's really, like I said, it's kind of fun. It's like a dance, it's like jazz. Observe without judgment. If you have an idea of what it should do, you will miss what it is actually doing. So, recommended reading. If you're interested in learning more about this form of body work, Arthur Lincoln Pauls wrote a book, The Philosophy and History of OrthoBionomy. I recommend the revised second edition. It's easier to read. Luann Overmeyer has written OrthoBionomy, A Path to Self-Care. It's a wonderful book to have handy. It's like a recipe book. Whatever restriction you're feeling in the body, you just look up that particular section of your body, and you'll find a number of things you can do applying OrthoBionomy principles to take care of yourself. It's a great book to have. Costs about $20. Kathy Kane, OrthoBionomy, A Practical Manual. I think it's an excellent manual. I do think you need a class to go with it to understand the principles that you're working with. Some of this is just much better taught hands-on. These pictures that I've used, I hoped would kind of give you the feeling of what you would feel in a hands-on class, to get the sensation of those kinds of movements I'm talking about. Further resources, the Society of OrthoBionomy's website is right here. There's also a page that I linked here where a number of articles, various writers discussing their experience with OrthoBionomy. It's good to get several different descriptions because OrthoBionomy is a philosophy and it's a principle-based work. It's good to hear how different people experience and express those principles. This is my contact information. So I've listed it in the order of the likelihood of your getting a response quickly. If you want to hear back from me quickly, send me an email. You can also visit me at my website. I'm going to update it. I will be teaching some classes, virtual classes this winter. I don't have it updated yet. I don't have the classes up, but I will have them up soon. You can expect them there after Thanksgiving at the very latest. Telephone's hardest for me. If you absolutely have to get in touch with me, and that's the only way you can do it, you can give me a call, but it works a lot better if you email me. That's my contact information, and I really am genuinely happy to answer any questions you might have, which leads me to the next thing, which is I'm ready for questions. I will tell you that I'm looking at the time we have remaining, If we get through the questions before the end of our hour, I do have a little bonus technique that I'll throw in based on Chapman's neurolymphatic reflexes, which is kind of neat. And if I don't get to do it now, you can always ask me about it in an email. Hi, Matthew.
Hey.
So I'll go ahead and stop the share so we can see each other large and in charge.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Well, thank you. Thanks for listening.
Yeah. Well, right now the audience is a little quiet, so I'm asking for questions. Anybody out there in our participants who would like to comment or have a question for Kåren? Now's the time. Just pop it into the chat. Like I said, they're a little quiet right now. Anybody?
Maybe it's all clear. Maybe they have no questions.
And the follow-on.
Yeah.
So my internet connection is not the greatest here today. I'm noticing that I'm freezing up with occasionally. So I may stall for a moment and then hopefully it comes right back. There's a question in the Q&A. Oh, here we go. We got 3 questions.
Three. Yeah, there are 3 down there. Okay.
Here we go. Thank you, Brian. Kara Esberg is asking, can you say a little more about rebound? What it feels like? And also, what is the bone makeup? You said 5 to 10% water. Is that true?
5%, 5 to 10%. Yes, that is true. And as a matter of fact, if you look at my article in the Pulse, the links are included in the PowerPoint as well, but I don't know if people can click on those. I suspect not. But if you look at my article in Pulse, I actually include links that support my claims. The bone is made up of more water than you might think. Yes, there's a fluid component to the bone.
Right. And what about what it feels like, that rebound, what that feels like?
So it is subtle. You know, that's one of the reasons why I keep emphasizing less is more. One of my teachers had us inflate a balloon, which you can do at home, and then hold it gently and compress one side and feel what we felt on the other side of the balloon. Interestingly enough, the lighter your pressure, the more you feel on the other side, right? This is very interesting. Press harder and you don't feel as much on the other side. Lighter pressure, you get more over here. Just very interesting. What the rebound feels like, you have to spend time playing with this. Right? Playing with it is important. We talk about playing Tai Chi as well, bringing a playful attitude to this rather than tensing up, right? Because the Chi can't flow when you tense up. Bringing a playful attitude to it will help. I'm gonna answer your question, but I'm just saying you may not feel it right away. Just keep listening. Just keep listening. What it feels like.
I'm reminded of push hands in Tai Chi.
Yes. Very
push
similar.
Hands. And I remember when I was first learning push hands, the master kept saying, stop pushing.
Exactly. Yes, that's it. That's it precisely. If you've ever played with a toy boat, when you were a little kid, if you ever made toy boats and put them, in the stream, and maybe you were holding on to it, that gentle tug that you felt, it's not a very fast running stream, that gentle tug that you felt pulling the boat away from you, or that feeling that you had when the boat flowed back into your hands. That's what it feels like. Only make it smaller, but that's what it feels like. Yeah, I think that's the best way to describe it.
Got it. I think that's helpful. Yes, Kara, your question did come through. I hope that's helpful. If you have a follow-up question, Kara, please submit it. Jamie Kemper wrote a note here saying, very interested in the ending technique.
You mean the bonus technique, the Chapman's neurolymphatic?
Possibly that. And then the other question we had was a full screen, show the location of the hiatal hernia technique.
Okay, sure. I can do that right now.
Okay, yeah.
All right. So look, here's your...
Kåren?
Yes.
For people to see full screen, they need to click on speaker view in the upper right hand.
Oh, they'll need to click on speaker view, but yes. But now that we're not in slideshow view, I think this is...
She might be able to see more.
Yeah,
Okay.
the slideshow isn't up now, so you should be able to see Kåren fill the screen.
So
Yeah.
this is an overview. Honestly, to learn the hiatal hernia technique, I would suggest that you actually take an OrthoBionomy class because it's a little complex, but I was giving you an example of what you could do with this. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to properly teach this in this format, okay, but I'll review. So you find the solar plexus, okay, there's a little hollow right in here, and you take your thumb and you move gently laterally towards the splenic flexure. You're going to bump up against the top of the stomach, not using a lot of force, okay, very light. You just feel a little resistance, okay? And then take your other hand and come down below the navel, below your hand here, and slightly laterally. You've probably got the lower border of your stomach. Everybody's stomach is in a slightly different place, but you've probably got the lower border. And lift up slightly. If you feel that engage with your thumb, then you've got it. And then you've got hold of it. And then you're just going to put those same principles into practice that I just talked about. Move it laterally, find the preferred posture. You're going to stack 3 positions in order to do this. So laterally, medially, find the preferred posture, hold. Towards the head, towards the feet, find the preferred posture and hold. If it's, hiatal hernia, it's probably going to be this way because everything wants to move this way. You lift up, and then you can also add a little rotation. See if it prefers to rotate this way or that way. Hold. Take a couple of deep breaths. Wait for the rebound. It is like a whisper, but you'll feel a little push. Now, when I first started out and I couldn't feel the push, it was harder to do the follow-on. Generally, the follow-on comes a little later for people when they're learning OrthoBionomy, but we practice Asian bodywork therapy. So my guess is it'll come a little sooner for you if you practice because you're already used to feeling things at that level. But if you don't feel the pushback, imagine you feel it because what you're imagining is probably what you're feeling. Or if you just feel like you don't need to be there anymore, just slowly come back down. It takes practice. It takes monitoring, it takes listening, it takes practicing getting into timing. All right, I hope that answered the question well.
Yeah, I think it did.
Okay.
Yeah. And then the last comment that we have right now is very interested in the ending technique. So
okay, so well, I guess we should move on.
We have time for the bonus.
Yes. So
and it might have, yeah.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm just thinking the ending technique, it might have referred to that hiatal thing as well. But yeah, it's a little vague in the question Jamie asked, but beautiful. I would say let's go for the bonus.
Okay, so this is Chapman's, an endocrine interpretation of Chapman's reflexes. Osteopaths learn about Chapman's reflexes. This is an excellent little book that you can get from the Academy of Osteopathy, and I have the website listed. I'm going to go back to sharing the screen if I can. Give me just a moment. Okay, I know I can't see me for some reason, but can you see the screen?
Your slideshow is back on.
Okay, all right. So it'll work for me just to use the slideshow. And you don't have to be able to see me. As long as you can see my cursor. Can everybody see my cursor?
Yep.
Okay. I don't know what happened to my video, but I restarted. Okay, good. We're here. So this is your bonus. Chapman's neurolymphatic reflexes, large intestine reflex. What I find fascinating about this is the large intestine reflex in Chapman's is on the stomach channel. So Yang Ming, right? Really nice. So basically what you do, I've got a lap here to work with. Basically what you do is you imagine, so here's the ascending colon, here's the transverse colon, here's the descending colon. Imagine that you're taking that and you're laying it down in the lap. Okay, so you've almost got a mirror image of the colon in the lap of the person, okay? So this would be the ascending colon right here along the stomach channel. And right here, up here, you get to the transverse colon, the first part of the transverse colon. Over here, the latter part of the transverse colon. And this is the descending colon. So just to review, here's your ascending colon, here's the transverse colon, here's the descending colon. Just imagine a mirror image, or imagine you laid your colon down in your lap, whichever works better for you. And here you go. Here's the ascending colon. Here's the first part of the transverse colon. Here's the latter part of the transverse colon. Here's the descending colon. Now, how do we work this? You know, a lot of times you'll find that people are quite tender along the stomach channel here. When I have a client who has chronic constipation, one of the things that I do is I find points along these reflexes that also correspond to the stomach channel. And then I match them with a corresponding point in the large intestine. So say, for instance, this is a painful point or tender point for them. I hold this point, and then I come up here. That would be approximately the location of the hepatic flexure, okay? And I hold those 2 points together, and I wait for them to pulse together. This is very shiatsu, right? I wait for the pulse to come up in my fingers, wait for them to soften, spread under my fingers. And very often, you know, the discomfort goes away. And then I can go on and find another tender point and again, match it to the corresponding point. I encourage you, based on OrthoBionomy principles, to pay a little less attention to where it should be on the map and a little more attention to where you get the response in your fingers. So if you're monitoring this tender point here and you come up here, you know, to the ascending colon or the transverse colon, notice where you get a reaction. Now, this is a lot like, you know, when you're working with a hara and you're checking for kyo and jitsu, you're noticing the reaction in your fingers. Hold it together, hold them together, wait for a pulse. This is an excellent way of working with chronic constipation. So that's one way of applying Chapman's neurolymphatics and also working the yang ming at the same time.
Nice.
So if there are any questions on that, I'm happy to answer. Can everybody see this information down here in the lower corner of the
Yes.
slide? Okay, because that's how you get it. You would go to the academyofosteopathy.org and they publish it. It's the only place that publishes it. And you can get a copy of it.
.org. Great. I just had a quick question about that myself.
Sure.
As you're going down the stomach channel and finding that transverse colon crossing over, is it at about the level of spleen 11?
Yes, it would be actually. I'm a little bit, I would say a little bit closer to spleen 10 actually, about that level.
Okay.
But of course on the stomach channel rather than the spleen.
Okay, right.
Right.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No problem. Any other questions?
I just love spleen 11 because it's the winnower's gate. And so much of our digestion is related to winnowing, you know, separating the wheat from the chaff so that we can glean that nutrition. Okay.
Yes.
Well, that's all the questions. And I think we're right up the top of the hour here. Let's see if there's one more Q&A that came through. Thank you is what we're getting. Thank you.
Well, thank you for letting me share with you. And like I said, I love answering questions, so shoot me an email. I will be putting together some classes to support my clients, and as well as, you know, just educate people in general about applying OrthoBionomy principles to shiatsu. So I will, I'll get that information out, but you're always welcome to ask me a question. I'm a sucker for questions, so.
Thank you, Kåren. This is
Debbie.
Really wonderful. And everybody who's on the call, remember that you can access the recording of this on the website if you want to go through and see some of this stuff over and practice these exercises a little bit more. So this was really fantastic, and I'm looking forward to hearing when you're going to be doing those smaller workshops. So we can.
Thank you very much, Debbie. I appreciate it. Take care.
Thanks for attending. Stay on a little bit so you can answer the poll, the evaluation as we exit. So take care, everybody.
Take care.